What's happening, people? Good afternoon. Welcome to United View. Welcome to this afternoon's show. Obviously, in light of the news that Mason Greenwood has left Manchester United, or will leave Manchester United, I was travelling back from some shows I was doing earlier on, and obviously the news broke while I was in transit. So immediately, obviously, spoke to Owen and said, after Owen had to cover this last time live by himself, I was adamant that wasn't going to happen again and we'd do it together. And now the club has made a final decision. We're going to go through everything. I can see a lot of people in the comments already having their say and did so last week with the club's statement. I had my say, Owen had his say, etc., etc. Just quickly, before Owen gets into all of the statements, I do know the mods did ask for a little bit of help and guidance because, some of them were saying this could be quite difficult, etc., etc. For me, I've always maintained that here at the channel, when the clubs speak on this will be an open forum for people to have their opinions. I understand loads of people's opinions are going to differ on this, and we're going to talk about our opinions and how we all feel in just a second. But what I will say to the mods in terms of how to navigate through this is to anything that's being derogatory to women, anything that's being abusive to myself and Owen or other people in the chat, or insinuating any hate or any violence, etc., etc., then you guys know what to do with that. Get rid of it. But in terms of people's opinion, mods, I will stress that this is the time for people to have their opinion. Hence, I know a lot in other shows when I've said that we're not going to be talking about Mason Greenwood. I can see that when people have put Mason Greenwood comments or stuff like that, they've been censored. But what I will say is let's not block people and banish them for having an opinion on this situation, as long as it's not hateful, as long as it's not derogatory to women or anybody else. So let's do that. Of course, there's going to be people who don't agree with me, or might not agree with Owen, or might not agree with each other within the comments. But this is a community, and this is what's going to happen. But I've always said that when this day comes and Manchester United make their decision, we will speak about it. We won't be doing a run-in commentary out of the sensitivity and to protect people who have been through this and who are part of our community. But now the time has come for us to talk about it. So what we're going to do now is, Owen, if we can go through the statements from Manchester United, Mason Greenwood himself, and obviously Richard Arnold, which are very long-winded. So I'm going to leave you to do that, and then we can discuss this as there's been a final decision.
Yes, so as Flex mentioned, these are quite long-winded, so you're going to have to bear with me as I go through all of these. And I think the best thing to do is just to read through them all, and then we can kind of just discuss them, break them down, etc. So the first statement's from Manchester United, and this one's probably the shortest of them all, really. And it says, Manchester United have concluded its internal investigation into the allegations made against Mason Greenwood. Our process commenced in February 2023, following all charges against Mason being dropped. Throughout, we have taken into account the wishes, rights, and perspective of the alleged victim, along with the club's standards and values, and sought to collate as much information and context as possible. This has required us to proceed with sensitivity and care to obtain evidence not in the public domain, including from those with direct knowledge of the case. Based on the evidence available to us, we have concluded that the material posted online did not provide a full picture, and that Mason did not commit the offences in respect to which he was originally charged. That said, as Mason publicly acknowledges today, he has made mistakes, which he is taking responsibility for. All those involved, including Mason, recognise the difficulties with him recommencing his career at Manchester United. It has therefore been mutually agreed that it would be most appropriate for him to do so away from Old Trafford, and we will now work with Mason to achieve that outcome. So that's the end of the Manchester United statement, which says that they've mutually agreed that it would be most appropriate that he would recommence his career away from Manchester United. Now, this is when we get into some of the much longer statements here. So let's start with the one from Richard Arnold, then we'll go to the one from Mason Greenwood himself. Richard Arnold, of course, the chief executive of Manchester United. He has said, and I quote, "Dear fans, now that we have concluded and announced the outcome of the club's investigation into Mason Greenwood, I want to be direct and transparent with our fans about the process and the reasons for our decision. It was an internal disciplinary investigation between employer and employee, which would ordinarily take place outside of the public eye. Given the public nature of the allegations and Mason's profile, I acknowledge that it was not an ordinary situation, but I felt it important that we still follow due process and, so far as possible, avoid media comment until I have made a definitive decision. When audio footage and imagery was posted online in January 2022, my feelings were of shock and concern for the alleged victim. Her welfare, wishes, and perspective have been central to the club's approach ever since, as have the club's standards and values. While we immediately concluded that Mason should be suspended pending investigation, we were also conscious of our duty of care towards him and the importance of making a decision based on full information. Until February this year, this was a matter for the Police and Crown Prosecution Service. It was only when charges were dropped that the club discussed the allegations with Mason and others involved in the case. Our investigation sought to collate as much evidence as possible to establish facts and context. This was not a quick or straightforward process for a variety of reasons. It was essential for us to respect the rights and wishes of the alleged victim. Also, we have limited powers of investigation, which meant we were reliant on third-party cooperation. Timings have also been influenced by my desire to minimize the impact of the investigation on our men's and women's teams, as well as our Lionesses. I acknowledge that this gave more time for speculation, but the alternative would have been to compromise due process or create untimely disruption. While we were unable to access certain evidence for reasons we respect, the evidence we did collate led us to conclude that Mason did not commit the acts he was charged with. I am restricted as to what I can say for legal reasons, including the alleged victim's ongoing right to anonymity, but I am able to share with you the following, which should give you some insight into the complexity of this case. And these go into bullet points here. The first bullet point is the alleged victim requested the police to drop their investigation in April 2022. We were provided with alternative explanations for the audio recording, which was a short excerpt of a much longer recording, and for the images posted online. Third bullet point says the alleged victim's family participated in the process and were given the opportunity to review and correct our factual findings. Last week, the media reported that we had decided to reintegrate Mason and that elements of a plan to do so had been leaked to them. Reintegration was one of the outcomes we considered and planned for. For context, over the course of the past 6 months, several outcomes have been contemplated and planned for, and my view has evolved as our process progressed. While the ultimate decision rested with me, I was taking various factors and views into account right up until the point of finalizing my decision. While I am satisfied that Mason did not commit the acts he was charged with, Mason's accepted that he has made mistakes, which he takes responsibility for. I am also mindful of the challenge that Mason would face rebuilding his career and raising a baby together with his partner in the harsh spotlight of Manchester United. Further, this case has provoked strong opinions, and it is my responsibility to minimize any distraction to the unity we are seeking within the club. Although we have decided that Mason will seek to rebuild his career away from Manchester United, that does not signal the end of this matter. The club will continue to offer its support both to the alleged victim and Mason to help them rebuild and move forward positively with their lives. Thank you for your continued support, Richard Arnold. So that's Richard Arnold's statement. And then the final statement here, as well as some other reporting that's been put out there in the last sort of hour or so, which again, I think it's why important there was a bit of a delay before going live. Obviously, Flex mentioned he was coming back, but there's been a lot of other details provided too. Mason Greenwood has released a statement saying, and I quote, "I want to start by saying I understand that people will judge me because what they have seen and heard on social media, and I know people will think the worst. I was brought up to know that violence or abuse in any relationship is wrong. I did not do the things I was accused of, and in February, I was cleared of all charges. However, I fully accept I made mistakes in my relationship, and I take my share of responsibility for the situations which led to the social media posts. I'm learning to understand my responsibilities to set a good example as a professional footballer, and I am focused on the big responsibility of being a father as well as a good partner. Today's decision has been part of a collaborative process between Manchester United, my family, and me. The best decision for us all is for me to continue my football career away from Old Trafford, where my presence will not be a distraction for the club. I thank the club for their support since I joined age 7. They will always be a part of me, which is United. I am enormously grateful to my family and all my loved ones for their support, and it is now for me to repay the trust those around me have shown. I intend to be a better footballer, but most importantly, a good father, a better person, and to use my talents in a positive way on and off the pitch. So those are all the statements. When it comes to that, just a bit of, I guess, added background context before I go back to you, Flex. So Adam Crafton, of course, wrote a big piece for The Athletic last week, which kind of led to Manchester United releasing a statement regarding Mason Greenwood. He's reported that United have abandoned plans to bring back Mason Greenwood following the backlash from the public. Obviously, the club faced criticism from within and outside as well. According to Crafton, some members of staff at Manchester United were prepared to consider their positions at the club in the event Mason Greenwood returned, and others began to explore going on strike or even resigning. It was also that I mentioned about Adam Crafton about what happened last week, etc., etc. There's also just a little bit as well from Simon Stone. So some people have reported that his contract is being terminated, which isn't actually totally the case right now. Simon Stone has reported that Mason Greenwood remains on full pay. All options remain open regarding his future, but he is not coming back to train at Manchester United. And no, there's no expectation of him playing for Manchester United ever again post a loan or a sale or something like that. So I think they're sort of suggesting that the most likely outcome right now is that he would be going on like a loan or something like that, but with a possible view to a termination or a possible sale. But that's kind of the updates on all of those statements. You're muted, Flex.
Sorry. Yeah, where do you begin to unpick that? For me personally, I'll speak my opinion first, and then obviously we'll get into what some of you guys think and yourself, Owen. My opinion, right decision, but I can clearly see from the wording of the statements that Richard Arnold has basically, and Manchester United, the people who make the decisions, which is him, have seen the reaction and folded. I can't help but think that I'm uncomfortable with how they arrived at the decision. In my opinion, you can see it all over the statements. You can see it all over how long this process has taken. And to use, and then something that's more concerning for me is if Richard Arnold thinks that Mason Greenwood hasn't committed these acts, these crimes, why has he decided to part ways with him then? If it, because if from a club perspective and a PR perspective, if you can't just get rid of people, because you could get sued and things like that, for him to come out and say that, they're satisfied, the club is actually satisfied that he didn't commit what was being alleged to have happened, why are you parting ways? What, just for pressure of fans? And that shows me that actually the people making the decisions at the football club, which makes me feel really uneasy, were happy to make this decision to bring him back. But after seeing some outrage that it seems Adam Crafton has beat them to it, and it get played out in social media, they've then reversed the decision. That's how it seems to me. Only Richard Arnold will know, and the people inside, Manchester United will know, and Mason Greenwood will know, and the family will know the truth behind that. I think it's really, personally, murky territory to allude to. Let me get my facts right. When he does the bullet points, basically say, I'm able to share the following with you that should give you an insight into complexity of the case. Well, we know that the alleged victim requested the police to drop their investigation. We were provided with alternative explanations for the audio recording, basically seeming like, well, we were happy with those explanations. Like, you guys didn't get to see that, but we did. But in my opinion, I don't see what, as a male, what has happened, what you've been threatened with, what's happened in your life that can make it a green tick to do what we saw, to do what we heard. I that's my personal opinion on it. And I just feel really uneasy that actually, when this is all said and done, we've got a CEO who actually was happy to let him come back, but only folded because of outrage, of PR. Because if you genuinely believe he's done nothing wrong, and I'm glad they've come to this decision, by the way, but if he's done nothing wrong, right? Why is he still here? Why is he not here then? How? And that makes me feel very uneasy. From the start, my stance on it was, I stand with the victims and the survivors who have to deal with this every day, and always was going to. That was always my stance. Other people have different opinions on it, and mine was to stand morally of what's right and wrong. But not everyone will agree with that, and I'm okay with that. If people think less of me for having this opinion, I've got my morals. I know where I'm at. But in the end, for Richard Arnold to come out and basically say he didn't do that, we're happy with that, and the club to say he didn't do these things, we're happy with that, I can't believe it. I think that's really, really concerning. And then from Mason Greenwood's perspective himself, again, look, for him to say, I think, look, obviously they're going to be PR, written to a T. So use the buzzwords of a better father, use the buzzwords of a better role model, a better professional, a better partner to his partner. But I feel like, personally, I just feel like he's just written the things that you'd want to hear, because where he says, I accept things that I've done wrong, etc., in the lead up to the events of this happening. But I heard what I heard, and I can't unhear that. So for me, you did do something wrong. So that's where I stand on it.
I think it's worth pointing out in Richard Arnold's statement that they do say, obviously, they don't have the same powers of investigation that a criminal investigation would have. They can't. They don't have warrants. They can't. They have to rely on, like I said, cooperation for investigation. So they've come to their conclusions, you could argue, certainly based upon facts that they've been given or provided with from all different sides, but certainly they don't have the power to issue to warrants and seize things, what have you, anything like that. Again, I think that's important to point out. I think for me, this entire process deserves so much scrutiny in how badly it's been handled. The whole thing. That it makes me really uncomfortable over the last 7 days how Manchester United have operated realistically. And I think for Richard Arnold to come out and say, well, that stuff that was reported last week, that was just one things we considered. Adam Crafton posted a thread on it, and where he detailed that they got this story. They went to Manchester United. They said, this is the story we've got. Do you care to comment on it, or do you care to give us some background explanation of some of the stuff that we've come to here, or we've been told? They said, can you extend your deadline a little bit for publishing, and we'll give you a comment. And then they released a statement at the same time, the same time that the article was published, essentially. And it was clearly in reaction to the article. And when you read through the statement last week, it came across very ad hoc, very sort of improvised and all this kind of stuff. And almost like they were dipping their toe into the water to get a reaction of the public of what they would say. But then to come out, a few days later and basically, look, when you read through it, they've said clear black and white, they don't believe he did what he was charged on, that he was charged for. And as you mentioned, it almost confuses both sides really as well now. And I think the handling of this has been so poor. And like you, I'm happy that they've got to where they've got to. I'm happy with the outcome. I can't sit here and be like, I'm outraged by the decision, because I said before, I wouldn't have brought him back. The whole situation is too much to come back from, in my opinion. And as a fan, I'd be uncomfortable with him coming back. But I do think the way that Manchester United have handled all of this is bizarre to a point, really, And that's what we were saying last week as well, is that, come to a decision and explain yourself. They've come to a decision and they really haven't. They really haven't explained themselves today. And what they've said is very contradictory. And like I said, I think that even that does a whole disservice to this entire process and to this entire investigation. And again, I don't think it can be overlooked what has happened in the last 7 days or so, and how Man United have operated when it comes to this. And I do think about, they were sort of saying that part of the pressure might have been because people were threatening to go on strike or threatening to resign and all this kind of stuff. What must they be thinking also as well at the moment too? What is going on in a day that, yes, we've got an outcome, and that's certainly an outcome that I'm happy with. I'm almost more confused than ever, really.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't help with where next, because I know they're saying like what you said about Simon Stone saying likely to be a loan, then termination or something. I don't think he'll ever play for Manchester United again. I don't.
No.
But the same way is when that I was shocked when you called me and said the decision's out and what it was. I was shocked because when I said my piece last week was this. When I done my pre-record when I got back in.
Yeah, I don't think it was a week
your
ago.
live.
It's not a full week
It wasn't
ago.
even a week, was it?
No.
Yeah, and I was like, well, it looks like he's coming back. They shaped that like he was going to come back.
Yeah.
What was how I read it. Was I wrong? I don't know. But that was how I read it. And then to see the U-turn, but to, like I said, the contradictory language that's used in a statement, I'm very surprised they've gone down stating whether they think he did do it or he didn't do it. Because if you start stating that on an actual press release or a conclusion as to how you've come to your decision, it has to match up with the outcome. Because so if you say we believe that Mason Greenwood didn't do X, Y, Z, so in light of that, we're helping him reintegrate back into the squad. I wouldn't agree with that decision, but you're saying that you guys are all on the same page. I think it's wrong, but you're on the same page, and your explanation of that marries up with the end outcome. Versus this way, what should have happened because of the end outcome is you probably don't say anything to do with whether he did or didn't do it, or if you are going to go that strong, having looked at the evidence, we feel that there's, no turning back or whatever. I'm not a PR person, so I don't know the best way to phrase it, but you get my gist. He, following what we found to be what happened, we've taken this decision. But what they've done is put the opposite decision with the opposite outcome, because that doesn't make sense. If you're saying essentially, the club statement and Richard Arnold's statement, obviously Mason Greenwood's statement's going to say it. All the statements are saying Mason didn't do the things he was accused of. The charges were dropped on top of that as well. The witness and alleged victim, his partner, dropped out, didn't want anything to do with it. Oh, they've been talking to the family. The family have been part of this. Everyone's saying he didn't do it. Now, the issue that I have with that is which has been the whole time, and I drew on my personal experiences of, working around young people and children who have been through this, or if you just look at the statistics and just wake up to see what's going on in the world, just because somebody who has been abused or assaulted or malnourished or neglected, it doesn't matter what it is, just because they very often go back to the abuser or the neglector or the assaulter. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. That doesn't make it right, is what I'm saying. That doesn't make it okay. Oh, well, he's got back. They've had a baby, so that means it's okay. I'm sorry. Are we in the social services? Do we know what sort of surveillance they're under? Do we know what sort of environment that child's going to be brought up in as a result of what's happened? No. And again, maybe I'm talking from a biased point of view because of the experiences that I've seen from people I have been around and know, and in my life. Fair enough. But I've seen people go back out of fear. I've seen people go back out of confusion. It happens all the time. So please, let's not use that to say, well, that means it's okay. And then you look at the judicial system, which we spoke about, Owen, and I know a lot of other people have. People are trying to say he's been proved innocent, and that's not the truth. Every person who maybe thinks something the other way is saying, well, he hasn't gone to try and be proved guilty, so it means he's innocent. No, he also didn't go through the due process in front of a jury because there wasn't enough evidence because of unforeseen circumstances with witnesses dropping out, and then the CPS saying, well, we don't have enough. We don't have enough now, so we can't take this to a trial because there's not anything there to prove. Now, you may be okay with saying, yeah, see, they didn't have enough on him. He never did it. I'm not okay with that, personally, with how I understand the system to be. So this is always going to be a personal thing. It's going to be loads of melting pots of opinions, and I understand that. I just want people to respect. I haven't been on here, people who don't agree with me say, you're effing it, you're that, I'll do you. Some people may say you're within your rights because this is about right and wrong. Some people may say that, but please do think about other people in this. That's what I would say.
Well, and I think also as well, as I mentioned earlier on, this was kind of the point I was trying to make, is that, so Richard Arnold said it in their investigation that they've done, because they don't have the powers of investigation that law enforcement does. They have to rely on cooperation, and they have to rely on third-party involvement when it comes to that. So if they've got everyone involved who is still together at this point, Greenwood and his partner, and obviously the partner's family, who seemingly are supportive of this situation, if they're all cooperating, Richard Arnold said it there, and they could correct facts. Well, you could argue still that could come from a biased point of view, from empirical hard facts. It could. Statistically, there's arguments to be made that it could. So it's difficult. I mean, some people could look at that statement that was released by United and by Richard Arnold and by Mason Greenwood today. I mean, I take the Mason Greenwood statement out of it because he's always going to defend himself. If he's seeming as the charges were dropped against me, he's always going to defend himself in that situation. So I sort of take that one out of it. But the United statement and the Richard Arnold statement, saying that they believe he didn't do what he was charged with. They mentioned it in the statement last week that they believe they have a duty of care to him from a player that's been at the club since the age of 7. And you could argue that those statements today come across as doing just that, because they're saying, and they said it even in the statements, didn't they, that they're going to help facilitate him resume his footballing career. And I guess you do that by outwardly laying out that you don't think he did what was charged of him for. Therefore, in their eyes, there's no reason he can't resume his career elsewhere. But once again, it comes back to then just again the language involved in all of this does not make a lot of sense for me. It really does.
It's contradictory.
It doesn't make a lot. It's contradictory. The way that this whole thing, like I said, has been handled. I mentioned it on Twitter. I muted the responses because it's not worth it when it comes to all that kind of stuff. But in the last sort of 7 days, the leaks, the different outcomes, the denials, even with their investigation, it was reported that they didn't consult with any DV charities. They didn't consult with women's rights groups or anything like that. They labeled people, or they tiered people in the media or certain people out there as, was it? What was the terminology that they used, Flex, in terms of how they labeled people? I forget off the top of my head, but it was like, these people that were not sure they'd be quite, I forget the word, but it was basically
Sorry,
saying,
I missed that bit. I was going through the sorry, go on. What did you say?
So I was saying, what was the labeling they used of people that, because they didn't consult with the various DV charities and stuff like that, and they labeled them. I forget that
hostile.
Hostile.
Yeah, hostile.
They labeled them hostile. Certain people not hostile. All of that, I still again don't believe can be overlooked. I don't, because again, I think that part of the process really, really stinks. Honestly, I think the whole thing really, really stinks. And I sit here today, like I said, content with the outcome that they've come to, and happy, but I'm not happy with this whole thing. Is probably not the best word, but I think they've made the right decision, the right call. But I think the whole process really has been ridiculous. Really,
Yeah, it has. Like I've always said, I always would do. The best that I can is get people's super chats out and people's thoughts about this. Forgive me, I've tried to go through some of them to make sure that they're appropriate. So if I cut any off halfway through, then you know why. Mahmoud said he's a Chelsea fan. He'll take Greenwood on loan for 2 years. Joseph says if we're being consistent, then Ryan Giggs shouldn't be a legend as well. It's just Danny says, just an observation: Benzema, Ronaldo, Hudson-Odoi, Basuma, Neymar, Greenwood. Who's the odd one out? I see a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to Man United. You're basically saying that the other players are allowed to carry on, but what about us? WJ Barrett says some will be happy, some sad, some will say no evidence. I would say my ears and eyes made my verdict. Regardless, he brought the club into disrepute. Right decision. Let's move forward. Owen Stylivizer says, it would have been real messy if he stayed. Maybe he can rebuild his career reputation and come back to Old Trafford in a few years. Big up United View team, as always. Again, we're just reading through. If you're just joining, we're reading through people's comments the best that we can. This is not a reflection. Not everything that's been said in these super chats is what I'm saying or Owen's saying. This is the voice of the floor. Skaneface says we shouldn't have double standards at our club. We still have a statue of a player who abused his wife as well. Masood says Adam Crafton is waffling. He is saving his own back from his previous claims. This decision was made by United a long time ago. Let's be real. I don't know, Masood.
I disagree. I don't think it was. I think
there was. Then why didn't they say it then?
Yeah, I think there's weight to the claims that came out last week, whereby they had a plan, by all accounts, a very extensive plan in place. I mean, they were saying that, you know, about situations of him not being involved with the Manchester United Foundation, so interviews. Richard Arnold was going to release a video. There's no video today. It's just a statement. And they'd set a deadline, by all accounts. Was it the August 4th, before the Wolves game? I believe it was. And that came and went. So, again, all of it. And then the leaks surrounding that. And let's face it, probably came from people that had got wind of that decision within the club and were furious about it. Those people that were saying they were going to go on strike or they were going to resign, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, like I said, the whole thing is just an absolute mess. It really is.
Anthony Tracy says loan and return is the goal. And I think the reason why he says that is because of this part where the statement says, although we've decided that Mason will seek to rebuild his career away from Man United, that does not signal the end of this matter. I feel like that's just the wording in terms of legally they still have to pay him out his contract because they haven't ripped it up. Again, they don't believe he's done anything wrong.
And also
they want to show a little bit of like we are still supporting him through this. The club wants to show that.
Well, and also as well, you see, again, this is a very unique incident, but in situations like this, they have to almost legally, from like a HR perspective, provide support to anyone affected by the situation within the business, within the organization as well. As they have said, they're going to be providing support to Greenwood, his partner, and I'm sure anyone else, you know, affected or involved, right? So I don't, for them to release a statement, and for multiple people, but particularly United and Richard Arnold to release a statement in the matter that they have today, for them to go back on it and let's say a year's time or 2 years' time, that'd be even worse. Let's face it, you know, because once again, the flip-flop even more. It's, you know, it'd be nuts.
If they made a decision that he was going to come back, they had to make that decision and then let it be. That was the whole situation of letting this drag on and on and on and on and on and not being decisive. That's one thing that did irk me in the Richard Arnold statement was I want to be direct and transparent with our fans about the process and the reasons for our decisions, because it's been anything but transparent, you know, about this whole process. I know they couldn't have said much, but it really has taken a long time. And I get the nature of what it was, but it didn't feel to me like that transparency was there, or, you know, it felt like anytime something was maybe about to happen, they would then react in hindsight.
But it's also worth pointing out as well, when it comes to them saying that they believe that he didn't do what was accused of him for, they can't say that he did do it because legally he didn't. You know, in the eyes of the court of law, they can't say that. Now, you could argue if they did believe that he did do it, they would just, you know, you just wouldn't say anything, right? You just wouldn't.
That's what I'm saying. They just would let him go, but not say anything. They've gone so strong.
I'm shocked how when they were going, because again, knowing how these things are working in marketing before, and not really comms or PR or anything like that, but they're quite peripheral sometimes. That those statements would have been gone through over and over and over and over and over again. Take this word out, put this word in. Maybe don't say that. Go through the lawyers. You can't say that. You can say this. Maybe if you phrase it this way, you can say it like that. I'm stunned that made it all the way through and no one sort of raised their hand as if to say, by the way, guys, this makes no sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense of what you're saying, unless there's some grander plan at play here that we don't know about. But again, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Shanister says Arnold believe he didn't do it, but that won't stop the backlash and scrutiny Greenwood come under because social media has already found him guilty. Kyle says Arnold is definitely lying. If everything pointed to his innocence legally / internally, then that's an honest and easy statement to make. Zoteng says Man United after further investigation, we are certain Mason didn't do any of the acts he's been accused, but we are still going to release him anyways. How dumb. And J Money says, feelings over actual fact. Boy, this world is doomed. Learn from the Johnny Depp case. Don't always believe what you read and hear on social media. Back the other way, innit? That happens both ways too, I suppose. This Zoto says this is unjust punishment. This always happens and it's pathetic because Mason's a young black man deemed innocent by his employer and still gets sacked. As a black man myself, I just think wrong is wrong, bro, to be honest. Even as a black, like I said, in my culture, and that things of this nature are severely looked upon. I can say that as my own word. Like my upbringing, my culture, that, and many others, by the way, just right or wrong. I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive to Black Caribbean people or Jamaican people. I'm just making a point of saying that there is looked upon very differently, very, very differently to a lot of, I don't know, you stole a car or I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean? That's just me being honest. So I don't see this as just like, this is just racism to him. I don't see it as that at all. You've got other white footballers that are locked up for something similar, gone, and rightly so. Triple G says, we heard a 15-second audio. The club and Arnold came to a conclusion of not guilty after listening to the full. The fans need to hear the full clip. I don't think they do. I just think I don't think that helps anyone. I think people have made their decisions already of how they feel about what they heard. I don't think they need to play this out anymore and put people through more grief, put people through more turmoil, people reliving their experiences who have been affected by this, put that family through more, put the fans through more. Because you can see the feelings low, like someone said,
well,
and
also as well with it as well. I mean, if there was, they've said, or Richard Arnold said, didn't he, that there was extra context or alternative explanations, whatever they said that they were comfortable with, but they won't say what they are. And he did also say that was probably most likely out of privacy or out of request for the family or anything like that. Which again, that is a difficult situation.
As well,
yeah,
for the alleged victim
as well. Yeah. So yeah.
Shane said cancel culture wins again. I think it's a bit stronger than that. I think it's a bit more serious than that, to be honest, bro. If he's innocent, it means the evidence was doctored. Says M. I don't know about that. Oregon says, so basically he's an innocent man based on all factors other than fan opinion of an audio clip. What Flex is talking about with the accuser going back is total conjecture and no evidence for it. Well, I heard what I heard. That's my opinion. Sunil says, imagine if Messi did that at 20 and Barcelona asked him to never play football again. Well, that would have been a result of his actions.
Talent should have nothing to do with these kind of things.
That's what I mean. That's what people are doing. It's really annoying that people do that. I don't get that. Because if this was Axel Tuanzebe, and do you know what? Maybe not even have to, I don't want to attach people's names to this, but you get what I'm trying to say.
But if this was generic young youth player that was average, you know what I mean?
No one would be saying it, and he would have been gone ages ago. That's just the facts of this. Let's just be real. If this was Harry Maguire, no one would be saying, "Oh, let's wait and see." Oh, this. No one would say it. They wouldn't. Let's not pretend here. So whilst, again, we want to play moral compass to a certain point. Well, what about this? There's more context. If the player was crap, people wouldn't be saying it. I'm just going to say that straight up. There
wouldn't even be this long investigation into this whole thing, in my opinion. Anyway, if the player was not this super talented player, or he was a youth player that had never played games or first team games for Manchester United or anything like that, or like you said, he was average, then they'd have said, look, this whole situation's brought the club into disrepute because it's happened in the public eye. We'll rip up your contract. It's done, And
it would have been an easy target, easy to get rid of, easily discarded. And that is the fact. It might be an uncomfortable truth, but if this was a player who wasn't good at football and had been rubbish in all the appearances they played, nobody would care. Innit? If this happened to Marcel Sabitzer, if this happened to Wout Weghorst, no one would be saying, but keep it. Well, what about this? What? No one would say it. They wouldn't. Ray Diaz says, based on the live chat, seems like, okay, I've read that one. Oh no, based on the live chat, seems like United made the right decision, mate. Ray Diaz says. Issues divisive within the team's fans. Imagine the chance Mason gets at away games. Forevan says, with all due respect, I think you're both being quite speculative. Fair play. I said I'm willing to, that's your opinion. Fair enough.
And the thing is with that as well, and like I said, I appreciate with the all due respect thing, but I think that's where the statements lead you today. They lead you to be speculative, I think, because parts of it are quite
because
vague.
of the information. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. Michael says the club know more than they're letting on. Charges dropped does not mean innocent. Listen to the audio and imagine it's your daughter. Right decision. And I know it's probably a little bit late for this, actually, well, a lot late. But obviously there is sensitive stuff being read out here, so I'm pretty sure from the top when we said we'll be going through the statements and stuff, you had the kind of warning to be able to know. But yeah, there is obviously a lot of opinion today. Daniel says life is very nuanced. A level of humility and caution is necessary without having all of the facts, especially when you have a platform. I don't get that sense from this stream. So, sorry you feel like that, Daniel. That you feel that we're not being cautious without having all the facts. Sorry that you feel like that. Like I said, we were always going to have our own opinions the same way, because look, we do have a platform, and the way that I chose for this channel to discuss this or lack of discussing it all the way up until now was in aid basically of doing it in that way. So sorry that you feel like that. Some people will feel like we've not done we've done a disservice to how we've covered this. Some people will feel that we've done it spot on. The truth is that not everybody's going to agree on how we've done it. So I can't help that. I apologize for that. Well, actually, I don't apologize for that, because I stand by the decision that I made for our channel to cover this. I don't apologize for that, but I accept what you're saying. You see it differently, Daniel. GJE says, look at how divisive this is. That's enough to let him go. Bring him back was always more drama for the club. He had to go. Let's finally move on. I hope we can close this chapter now and move on, says Culture. It's just Danny says, love you all. Chin up, guys. And Anthony says, time to move forward after it. Focus back on the pitch. Marcus says, I've had it with this club. Gross incompetence by the club. He deserves a second chance. We all get one life. This decision will come back to haunt us. Oregon says, it sets a bad precedent for victims and criminals that social media can force a result like this based on opinions and not facts. The club made a 180. Yeah, I think we've. I don't know what more there is.
No, I don't think there is
say.
more.
Have I missed?
I don't think, like I said, there is too much more to say or anything like that. Or, as I said, but when I did the live,
just quickly, DJ says, obviously DJ Park Channel says, I heard the voice notes. That was enough for me. United builds this up big time.
Yeah, I think, like as I mentioned before, when I did it live last time, obviously everyone's going to have their different opinion. I'm not here to say people are right or wrong with their opinions. They're just people's opinions, people's viewpoints on it. And I think that, like I said, that people that just focus on having him back because he's this great football player and it can make your team win, that's where I sort of draw the line at it, because I think it does disservice to the whole situation and the whole and everyone affected and involved by it. But I understand people are going to have different opinions and on it. And frankly, I'm happy it's over. I'm happy it's over and everyone can move on.
The real people I feel for is, like I said, victims and survivors who have to deal with this all the time. And this is the reality of what's happening. And Wabatonga makes my point clear here. Anthony is accused of rape. He's still playing. Greenwood isn't, to be honest. Don't think UV should have done this very long stream on Greenwood either. Well, like we've said the whole time, if you know how we've covered this, we've literally saved talking about this. We've saved up, what is it? How long has it been, Owen?
Gosh, the
18 months.
Yeah, the only times, and I can categorically say this is how it's worked, is the only times we've done any content based on Mason Greenwood is when the first incident happened. Something
factual from the club.
When the incident happened, when the charges were dropped, I believe, last week when United made a statement, and today. And that's the only times that we've done it. And I think, as
There
I've
you
said
go.
before, and this is my opinion, this isn't you saying, this is my opinion, but I think that's the most fair way to do it. I don't think it's a situation to drive clicks or drive engagements. I don't think it's to drive growth or anything like that, because it's not about that. It's not about going live immediately. It's not about, like I said, posting it for whatever gain. This is a really serious situation. It still is. It will always be a serious
bigger than
situation.
football. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's my feeling. It's always been bigger than football.
Yeah, and Baba Tonga's saying, you don't think United View should have done this long stream. At the end of the day, we've made sure, like Owen said, to not make this a continuous off the back of speculation, continually talking about this. I think this is the exact time to talk about it as a fan channel, as a community, as human beings. So I disagree with you there that you don't think we should be here doing this. It's already bad on him. Don't need to fuel it. Let it rest now. Again, I disagree with you there, my friend. I think we've done an excellent job to the best of our ability at something that affects nearly 6.4 million women and young people as well. Ronald says, last super chat of the day, before we kind of move out, Ronald says, Flex, Owen, great respect to you both for the way that you've presented this very sensitive issue. Although I'm one who would have liked him to stay, wish him and his family all the best, whatever the future has got for them. So yeah, guys, that will be it. Obviously, Owen will see us out, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff still coming. I think there's some more content coming this afternoon, later on this evening with Cam. He's got the tactical view coming out from a couple of days ago. So, but we said we would cover it, and it's over now. He's left the football club.
Indeed, as Flex mentions, it's now over, and obviously we'll be back with more content in the future, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Be respectful in the comments. Right, peace.